Have you ever been told to act your age? I know this is mentioning the obvious, but from the moment your age starts to end with teen, your childhood is over, and even though you're too young to be taken seriously, you're also too old to live without responsibility. The exact age might differ by a year or two, but from the moment you become, 12, 13, 14, there's suddenly this expectation of you to be mature and be responsible and act like an adult. And that's not just an expectation that other people have of you, it's also an expectation that you have of yourself. Because you've just started to have sort of understanding of yourself and the world around you, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm like a person and stuff. You want to be taken seriously, you want to assert yourself, you want to solidify your personhood. I don't even know if that's a thing. You want to be taken seriously by the adults, but at the same time you're too inexperienced for adults to take you seriously, and they usually kind of just shove you aside for reasons that vary in how valid they are. As a response to this dynamic, many things happen, and one of them is that you start to distance yourself from childish things and from kids things. You no longer watch kids shows or read kids books or play with kids toys. You drink beer and get into fights and yell at your parents, like adults do. And as you grow older, your brain develops, so people take you more seriously, and then there's more responsibility put on your shoulders, and you get more and more distant from your childhood, and you slowly enter the real world, and then everything is so boring and life is so shitty and just feels so not fun, and you start to think that damn, the real world sucks. Except that, is it the real world? Is this really real? Part 1. Middle school, high school stuff. School is like a mini society, and living in it is at the same time easier and harder than living in the actual society. Middle school is when you just start to realize that, oh wait, I'm not the center of the universe. A lot of people don't actually realize that, but it's when you start to understand that, oh, there are other people around me as well. There's authority and people and groups and things that you fit into. That's when you realize that certain things give you advantages, like your face and your height, your ethnicity, how rich you are, whether your parents put you in piano class ever since you were 4 or not. All these things give you advantages or disadvantages, and most of things aren't things that you really chose, so it's kind of unfair, but fuck can you do about it? And then when you enter high school is when you just have the outline of a personality, it's a shadow of what personality can be. You kind of have your own thoughts and beliefs and stuff, and all of those are subject to change, and they most probably will change, but a husk is there. There's a thing over there now. That's when people have friend groups and cliques, and some kids are popular and some kids are unpopular and they're outcasts, and you start to develop a taste and interests, and you realize that liking certain things might make you fit in easier than liking, say, certain other things. Liking something to a certain amount will make you different enough to be unique, but if you like it just a little bit more, it will make you too different, and it's gonna make you weird. And that's when you realize that there are these boxes that we need to fit in. If you fit in them, good, you can probably live your life without being noticed by that many people, and even if you do get noticed, it's not gonna be negative. But if you don't fit into those boxes, it really depends on how you don't fit into them. If you don't fit in the box, but you're still kind of shaped like a box, good. If you are shaped like, I don't know, a dinosaur, you're not gonna be I don't know. Basically, my point is that's when you realize that, okay, there are certain things you should do, and if you don't do them, you're not gonna fit in that easily. One of those things happens to be being childish, or whatever people deem to be childish. Watching animated shows, playing with toys, having plushies. And then when you graduate high school and you go to college, that's when usually for most people the last glimpse of childhood that they had in them is just disappeared. And you start to look around yourself and you feel like the world has lost all of its colors. Everything feels so boring and so samey. So many things feel meaningless. Life is just depressing. Does it have to be? Part 2. How to act your age. I remember back when I was a kid at a wedding, there was this woman who was in her 50s and she was drinking and dancing and partying really hard. And I remember hearing some people say, oh, she doesn't really act her age, just having a lot of fun. And every now and then I just remember that and think to myself, what did they mean that she doesn't act her age? Like, why is having fun when you're 50 is not acting your age? I think we've become conditioned to mistake maturity for being old and boring. Have you ever thought about what is the criteria for acting a certain age? Like, how is a 30-year-old supposed to act? A 30-year-old should know how to communicate their feelings. If someone is in their 30s and they're upset with me, I expect them to come to me and say, hey, I'm upset with you because of this. If they stop talking to me and start giving me side eyes and acting all weird and distant all of a sudden because they're upset that, I don't know, I ate their ice cream or something, I'm gonna think that they're acting like a child. I'm gonna think they're not acting their age. But would you think a 30-year-old is not acting their age if they have plushies? Like, if you're just supposed to have adult fun when you're an adult, what is there that you can do? How many exclusively adult fun activities is there? Like, you can drink and go to clubs and do drugs. Maybe you can ride a couple of rides in amusement park that you weren't allowed to before, but that's really it. You can also have sex, I guess, I don't know, but if that's like the most fun activity that you can do in your life, I think you have a really boring life. Remember those boxes I talked about? How much of that is real? How much of that is actually important? Like, after you leave high school, you're not in this secluded, closed society that's like you need to fit into, and if you don't, your life is fucking miserable. I mean, of course, unless you live in a really small town, like, that's kind of different, but you carry those boxes with you. A lot of times we just deny ourselves the joy of experiencing so many things because we think they're not appropriate for our age. Says who? How is it not appropriate for your age to have a plushie? A lot of the anxieties that we have about the real world aren't actually real, and I don't mean to have an overly simplistic point of view on this. I'm just trying to say that part of our anxieties don't need to be anxieties because they don't matter. There are real anxieties that we all have. Dealing with health issues, financial problems, family problems, all of those are real struggles that we have. But even in that case, I think a lot of times we forget to live in the moments in between. Late at night, you look outside the window and you think to yourself, wow, so many people just exist and they're living right now. The issues we deal with are true, but that small moment of calm that you felt is also true. All of that together makes your life, not just the moments of calm and not just the moments of struggle. And a lot of times we forget to appreciate that. I started journaling when I was 13, and when I turned 20, I read through all of those stuff again, and I realized that, hey, I knew so many things when I was a kid. I was still really stressed out. The most stressful time in my entire life was when I was in middle school. I don't know how I survived that. I read through the stuff I wrote when I was in middle school, and weirdly enough, I saw that I also had so many moments of calm. I would just sit in the sunlight and just think about stuff. Whenever I felt really stressed out and overwhelmed, I would bake a cake. The times when I felt really lonely and had no one to talk to, I would just pour myself a cup of tea, go outside, and start writing stuff. And then I slowly stopped doing that. By the time I was 20, I'd completely forgotten that I did that at all. And after remembering, I realized that I knew so many things when I was a kid. I knew what could calm me down, and I did it, and it was actually a really healthy coping mechanism. So I did all those things, and surprise, surprise, it still works. Writing about your feelings actually helps you deal with them. I realized that the problem isn't growing up, the problem is that you forget. You forget the things that calmed you down, the things that made you feel in the moment. Because you get too consumed with all your problems. So many of those problems are real, but that doesn't mean that you can't take a break from them. And this is coming from someone who's had a really rough life. You wouldn't know because I haven't talked about it. I'm not in a mood to trauma dump, but take my word for it. It's kind of like you break down entirely when you're in your teenage years, and when you enter young adulthood, you have to build all of that back up. You don't need to lose whatever you had left of your childhood. You can rediscover that. You can relearn that, because you forget. When you relearn that, you'll remember how you used to see color in things again. It's not always that colorful, but it is sometimes, and that's better than nothing. Unofficial Part 3. I want to add this as a side note. A lot of the things that I mentioned that made me calm down are active hobbies. I'm not sure if that's the right word for it, but I think it is. A lot of the hobbies that we have are passive hobbies. Something like reading a book, playing a video game, watching a movie, or watching a series, listening to music or podcasts. These are all your hobbies and there's nothing wrong with them. That's like everybody's hobbies. But in all of those, you're consuming something. But with active hobbies, you end up creating something. So something like writing, baking, knitting, pottery, art, whatever. You're actively creating something and you don't need to be good at it. You just need to enjoy it. If you enjoy it, that's it. That's all the requirement it has. It just feels great because you can channel your energy into something and it just makes your brain kind of rest. And the important thing is, remember, it doesn't have to be good. You don't need to be great at it. You don't need to be good at it. You don't need to turn it into a side hustle. You don't need to make money off of it. You don't even need to tell anyone or show it to anyone. Just do it because it feels good. This part is unscripted and you can tell. This is also one of those boxes that I said. Have you ever thought about how people don't sing because they're not good at it? When did that become a requirement? Why do we have to be good at singing to sing? It's fun. It feels good to sing, so just sing. It feels good to dance. Do it because it's fun. Don't do it because you're good at it. And it definitely feels better when you're good at it, but it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to have a burning passion for something. It doesn't have to give your life meaning. You just have to enjoy it. You know, something like singing, dancing, playing something, jumping. When was the last time you jumped? Have you ever thought how fun jumping is? Why don't we jump anymore? That mechanic is not even in video games anymore at this point. Just jump is fun. Just jump.